refusing to let my parents rename me. My 15M parents gave my sister, 16F, brother, 13M, and me nature names and more specifically, water nature names. My sister is Ocean, I'm Cove, and my brother is River. They wanted our names to have a theme without being matchy with the same initial, so we got our names. The story was told to us when we were little and my parents were proud of the names they gave us. Back when we were all stuck at home, my parents started to express regret about their choices for us. They actually told us over dinner one night that they wish they had given us better names and apologized for making us live with the names we were given. A few months after that apology, my mom and dad told us they wanted us to be Elizabeth, sister, James, me, and Michael, brother. They said since we were kids and weren't in college yet and nobody had their license at that point, it would be the best time to do it. All three of us said we didn't want to change our first names. My dad looked into whether they could do it when we said no, and all answers he got pointed to a very strong no. But it was also unusual to change your older kids' first name, so they went ahead and tried anyway, but once we were asked if we wanted different names they were told no. My parents brought it up a lot to us afterward. My brother asked why they wanted to name him Michael and said the name was crappy. They told him Michael was a timeless name that would age well and gave him some nickname choices. He said he hated it. So they asked if he would consider Charles instead, which he said was an even bigger no. Our parents focused really hard on him for a while because he had asked the question about the name, so they figured he was the most open. So far none of us have agreed to the name change. I told my parents that I know they regret the names, but we're all used to unlike our names and don't want to go for more boring and common names. My parents argued that in the future we will regret it and we'd have to pay for it ourselves when we're adults and we realize having weird names does not age well. I asked why they can't let us get there if we ever do. They said we should be thinking more of our futures, and they accused me of having a really bad attitude because I said James was as bad to me as Cove is to them now. They told me to look online and I did, and I saw a lot of hate for our names. But I told them it still didn't change my mind. My parents said we should respect them enough as parents to allow this and that we're all being disrespectful.
Comment 1. NTA, I think Cove is a badass name. Also, it's wild to me that they just suggested names they wanted you to change to and didn't ask you if you had a name you'd rather be called. If you're worried about the future, you could always add a more traditional middle name, which you choose, and then you'll have the option in your professional life of going by your middle name if you prefer. OP comment. My parents said they felt they had to choose to right the wrong. But also because they knew we liked our names. So they didn't want us to change them to more of the same. I'm not worried about the future really. My parents are, and they are pushing for us to. Not sure if my siblings have any doubts, but I don't. Comment 3. NTA. Usually I'd expect to see this the other way around, with parents trying to force their unique and creative names on kids who just want to fit in. But you're old enough now to express your desire to keep the name or not, and old enough to understand that there will be some people you meet who will instantly judge you for your name, and you like the name enough to not care about this. Yes, it costs money to change names, but it's honestly not a lot. There's a guy at work who paid to legally change his name to Luke Skywalker, and then paid to change it again when he realized how bad an idea this was. There is no harm in keeping your names if you like them now, you can always change them later. A friend of mine also named her baby Ocean. I think it's unusual for sure, but then so is my friend, and not at all in a bad way. If the kid grows up to be like her, Ocean will suit her just fine, and maybe you're this way too. Telling my boyfriend he deserved to get humbled. I, 18F, and my boyfriend, 19M, have been dating since we started college in October 2021. For the past I'd say 8 months my BF has become very interested in UFC, MMA. What to call it. He gets up at like 3 a.m. to watch fights and often has play fights with his friends. One of these friends are important in this situation, I'll call him S. We had a very large group of friends, we all graduated in summer but we all kept in touch over summer until now. Now these play fights or spars, as my BF would say, were all fun and games, but they actually led my BF to believe he could actually fight because S, who says he does MMA, said he's naturally good. This led to a massive ego, and he said he wanted to have an actual fight, and one of our other friends' dad owned a gym with ring and he said he could let him fight there, if that was even legal. S proposed a guy for him to fight, and it was a guy back from school I'll call A. S was friends with a not close friends, and I knew A because we used to sit next to each other in class. S said he'll try get a hold of him. A agreed, shockingly. When I agreed, I did express some concern to my BF, multiple times, and he didn't listen. A was a quiet guy, but as we sat next to each other for a year I knew probably more than others about him. He was pretty much just one of those traditional masculine males in a physical sense, worked out 6 days a week, rode horses and did archery, owned large dogs, but was one of those guys that looked intimidating but was actually a nerdy and friendly guy. My BF didn't like A or A's friends, and neither did the rest of the boys in our friends group. I always questioned my BF on this, as A had literally never even spoken to him, and my BF used to say it's because A is so arrogant and thinks he's so good looking. This led to a lot of arguments with my BF, because why did my BF care if other women were attracted to A when he had me? Nobody knew if A could fight, but S said he told him something about he had been training in some form of martial arts. The whole build-up to this, my BF was acting so childish. He'd constantly try insult A in a group chat that was made, and A wouldn't even open them 90% of the time, and I don't think he responded once. When the fight came along, there was only one outcome from the start. A was visibly towering over my BF, and he had clearly bulked up. On top of that, turned out he could fight. My BF lost in I'd say 90 seconds. After it, I didn't bother consoling him. I berated him because I expressed my concern multiple times and he picked not to listen to me. He said I'm an AH because I should support him unconditionally if I really loved him. He now won't speak to me because he says I embarrassed him in front of his friends while he was vulnerable. Part of me feels bad, but I feel like he needed to hear the truth. Comment 1. NTA for not consoling him. You tried to reason with him every step of the way, with no avail. Some people have to learn things the hard way. Watching UFC and wrestling with the boys doesn't make him a gladiator, no matter how much his friends fed into it. If you berated him in front of his friends after the loss, that was asshole-ish. The ass-kicking was enough embarrassment at that point. He didn't need you to pile on in front of them. That should have been a private conversation later. Hopefully, this ego thing was a one-off thing. Otherwise, I can't imagine having a mature relationship with a person like this. Hopefully he learned his lesson. Comment 2. NTA. Your boyfriend clearly has some underlying confidence issues that should be addressed. He seems to either be extremely cocky or needs to be constantly complimented. You expressed concern and made it clear you didn't approve and didn't support him in terms of actually fighting. He should understand that you could train professionally for decades, but when it really comes to fight or flight, you can freeze. Simple play fighting won't actually accomplish anything. Comment 3. NTA. Amateur fighter here. You really get a huge piece of humble pie when you step into a martial arts gym, and unfortunately, the average guy that doesn't train never gets to experience this. Your boyfriend just got a huge wake-up call of how much he actually doesn't know how to fight and had his ego hurt. He's probably embarrassed that he got beat up in front of you and his friends. Give him some time. Telling a doctor I don't need their consult. I was born with a cleft lip and had extensive surgeries to correct it. Now it's significantly less visible and the result was told to be impressive. On the unrelated note, I also have a wax issue with my ears, so I have to see an ENT specialist doctor from time to time to get the wax removed. It happened to me before to have doctors, which are supposed to just remove my wax, to marvel at my cleft lip and the whole work done around it. For me it's weird because 1, I don't consider it that groundbreaking, and 2, they're doctors, shouldn't they be more used to that? However, I usually don't say much about it. Anyway, cue Dr. Jane, who was supposed to remove my wax for the day. I scheduled an appointment specifically for that. She does it and then proceeds to ask me to open my mouth, although I told her the issue is with my ears. I comply, foolishly imagining it's gonna be relevant to my problem, but she begins talking about my cleft lip and how great the result is and wants to examine my nose point, at which I stop her. I tell her there's nothing wrong with my nose and ask her if she suspects there might be an infection spreading to my ears or something. She says something like, "No, I just wanted to have a look and see more about your cleft lip." I stop her again, literally pushing her hands away, and keep asking if she's done with my ears. She says yes and keeps trying to see the work for my cleft lip. I told her to quit it, that I'm not sort of a museum piece that she gets to look at from all the sides, and that for my cleft lip problems I see other doctors. Meanwhile, I got up from the chair and started to get my stuff to leave. She said that there's no need to react like that and all she did was try to help me. I explained all the help I needed from her was with my ears, and if I need more, I'll let her know. By then I was already dressed with the hand on the door handle. She kept telling me this is no way of behaving and I'm disrespectful to her. I almost snapped but told her as calmly as I could that for me this is not an interesting case, but a lifelong condition, and I'm not fond of people pointing fingers at it. I explained to her I find it unprofessional and rude. I then just left to avoid further conflict. Was I wrong? Comment 1. NTA, you gave her every opportunity to stop examining your cleft lip. She decided her curiosity mattered more than your clear boundaries. She was wrong. Comment 2. NTA. You're not a creature in a zoo to be looked at. Doctors should always ask permission before inspecting something completely irrelevant to why the patient is there, and the fact that she continued to try and look is absolutely appalling. Sorry you've had so many experiences like this. Comment 3. No. Ultimately, you shouldn't be seen for your cleft issue all the time by every doc you see. That said, I also feel that they may benefit from seeing it and asking about it for their own education and to help other patients who experience it, or indeed any other condition. It's how they approach it that makes the difference, Imho. I noticed this, may I ask/discuss it? Which gives you the option. Regarding wax. In the UK, docs don't see patients for that issue. A few drops of warm olive oil in the ear can be super helpful. I assume you may, or others reading this, may have to pay for healthcare, and sometimes home remedies save you cash. Telling my family their comments about my son's name and not making me regret the name, but instead are making me regret them. My husband and I welcomed our son into the world in November. We chose the name Reed for him after some searching. Neither of us got our first choices, but we love the name and it fits our son beautifully, we believe. I knew my son's name was a bit of a standout among my family. They like to reuse the same names that are popular and always seem to float pretty high in naming charts. For boys, the top 3 in our family are James, Benjamin, and William. But Reed isn't a weird or unheard of name. My family were all very quiet when we announced the name, and almost immediately they started dropping comments about people making weird naming choices for their children which never directly mentioned my husband and me, but we both felt it was aimed at us. Then they commented a few times how there's nothing wrong with good, solid, classic names that everyone knows and loves and reuses. But then they started to say Reed was an odd choice, or that they had no idea where we found such a name, even though it's in the top 400 choices. My parents accused me of trying to be trendy and not thinking about my son's future. I decided to confront my family without my husband present because I felt like it wasn't fair to drag him into it more. I asked them what their problem was and why they were being so mean about the name. They told me they hated Reed and they felt it was a very unattractive name and we did not think it through at all. They told me we should have reconsidered and given him a real name, not something trendy that came up in the last 20 to 30 years. They said we had so many beautiful names to choose from and we made a horrible decision. Then they said they had tried to gently show us the light, but we ignored their efforts. I told them if their comments about my son's name were supposed to make me regret the choice, then they failed, because all it did was make me regret them, because they were being rude and hurtful. My family did not take my comment well and told me I was being rude and I was behaving like a child who can't accept the truth. Comment 1, NTA. Sounds like your family is heavily invested in conformity. How boring and uncreative. Congratulations for giving your son a name you both liked. When we named our son, we very consciously avoided recycling family names because we considered them to have baggage, good and bad, and invited unnecessary comparison to the namesake. You were on the mark with your response to your family. The fact that they tried to turn your characterization of their actions, rude and hurtful, back on you and suggested that you were rude and childish makes the case for their being boring bourgeoisie. So glad you escaped their narrow-mindedness and are able to stand up for your creative choices. On another note, I applaud your consideration for your husband. It would have been annoying to subject him to your family's vapid complaints. Comment 2. Your family is a bunch of Rs. I struggle to imagine what it's like being so inflexibly wedded to old-fashioned names that they hate the name you picked for your child. How wildly petty of them. I've seen a few baby name posts on here. Only once did I consider the parent to be the R, and it's because the child shared a name with an infectious disease. Reed is a perfectly nice name. It hits the sweet spot of being uncommon without being weird. Clear NTA.